And first item is public comment for closed session items only. Do we have any public comment on closed session items?
I don't have anything on text.
And nothing on email.
No one on Zoom.
All right, thank you all. Next, we will do our roll call.
Trustee Donnelly,
Present.
Trustee Friedman,
Present.
Trustee Rodriguez,
Here.
Trustee Izant Gonzalez. Here. Trustee Jackson Miller.
Here, thank you, Linda. And now we will go ahead and convene to closed sessions. We'll close out this link and hop on to our next one. See you over there.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. We're just going to wait another minute or so to get started. Hello, Principal Lemos, and I think I see Pedro in there. Hello, welcome to our meeting. We're excited to meet you and hear from you in a few minutes. Okay. I see all of the trustees are present. Looks like we are ready to go. So welcome, everyone. We're going to call our open session of the board meeting to order. And we are going to start with our favorite item 3A, the Pledge of Allegiance. And Principal Lemos, you probably would like to introduce your student, so take it away.
Good evening. So I'm very proud to introduce Pedro Navarro, one of our bright and shining 4th grade students, and he is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States,
America
uh,
and
to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice.
with liberty and justice for all.
Nice job.
Staff, students, parents, and the community share the responsibility for each child's success. We are committed to ensuring that each student develops the skills and confidence for lifelong achievement and is prepared to make a positive contribution to our world.
Nice job, buddy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You did a great job and we really appreciate you being here. Pedro, I have a copy of a certificate that's going to be presented to you. So you'll get your own version in your hands soon enough, but I'm going to read what it says to you. Okay, so everyone can hear all of the kind things that your teacher and that the staff at Santa Cruz Gardens have said. So this certificate is a certificate of recognition for our Student Pledge of Allegiance leader and our mission statement reader, Pedro Navarro, 4th grade student from Santa Cruz Gardens. Santa Cruz Gardens is beyond proud to have Mr. Pedro Navarro as our representative to lead the pledge at this week's board meeting. Pedro is an exemplar of what it means to be a Santa Cruz Gardens dolphin. He is safe, kind, and responsible. Pedro is compassionate and responsible, always looking for ways to be helpful and care for those around him. He works hard in all academic areas and is creative and is an avid athlete, both in school and out of school. He is a friend to all and always greets you with a warm hello and asks how you are. We are lucky to have Pedro as a student at Santa Cruz Gardens. I'm going to give you a round of applause. Those are wonderful words. And Pedro, if it's okay with you, sometimes board members like to ask questions. Is that okay if we ask you a couple of questions?
Of course.
Okay.
Well,
And it
hello,
looks like-
Pedro.
Hello.
So I was at the school today, and you have a really cool school that you go to. What is it? Are you in your classroom right now, or where are you broadcasting from?
I'm at my principal's office.
Okay. Oh, okay. And I like what you have at the front desk when you walk in. You have hello in every language, which is really cool. So I hear you're quite the athlete.
Yeah.
When they were telling me about you. And what sports do you play?
Well, I played tackle football and then I did swim for a little bit and then I'm gonna start flag and then join tackle again.
Tackle, football, swim, flag, and tackle.
Yeah.
Boy, yeah, that sounds like some great great playing right there. You must have a lot of energy. Do you play basketball or any other sports?
Not really.
Okay, well, football is a good sport, great sport. So maybe I'll see you, in the with the championship with the what was it, the Sharks, the football team that went to the championships. Well, it's really nice meeting you.
You too.
Any other? Phil, go ahead, Phil.
Thank you for coming tonight. I like your shirt.
Thank you.
Since you've been back at school, what's the favorite part? Don't say recess.
Favorite part is being with friends that I didn't see over the summer.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. It's so wonderful to hear from you. And I have a son in your grade as well. And I very much appreciate hearing from you and how much you enjoy sports in school.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here, Pedro. I hear you're very creative. What are some of your favorite ways to be creative? Is it art, music, something else?
Well, to be creative, I like building Legos and making some art sometimes.
That's super cool. Thanks for being with us today, Pedro.
So I heard Legos. Legos are great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes a lot of work to build to do Legos, huh?
Kind of.
Concentrate.
Pedro, I just want to again express our appreciation for having you here and all of the things that I got to read about you being kind and compassionate and always taking the time to greet people and welcome people. That's not always easy for everyone to do. Sometimes that feels hard and sometimes that feels hard wearing a mask or being in new and different circumstances. So I just want to honor that's something that you do, and that's a really wonderful way to be able to move through the world and show people your kindness, and it's infectious, right? Kindness is contagious, like it says on the bulletin board. So when you do that, when you acknowledge people and greet people that way, it helps give them the confidence to do the same thing. So that's really, really cool. And it's so nice to have you here. We really appreciate you taking the time and being there with your principal. So thank you again for being with us. Unfortunately, I think we do have to move on with the rest of our meeting. Thank you so much, Pedro, and thank you, Principal Lemos. You guys have a great night.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, next we are going to adopt the agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll make the motion, Carolyn.
I'll second.
All right, Phil seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, next is a report out of closed session. We have one item to report On item 2B, the board unanimously approved the Comprehensive School Safety Plan Part 2 in closed session. Item 4, the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt and approve the consent agenda?
I'll make the motion.
I'll
Give it a
second.
second. Oh, Carolyn, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. And now we'll move on to our recognition item. Recognition of the Soquel Union Elementary School District and Santa Cruz County Spelling Bee participants from Soquel Union Elementary Schools and New Brighton Middle School.
So I believe that we do not have the one award winner who was going to be present tonight. I'm not seeing their square, but I could be wrong. We do have Principal Broadhurst, though, who can at least acknowledge the winner that was going to be recognized tonight.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I am in transit. That's why I'm wearing a mask and actually in public. I did send the link to our 8th grade third place spelling bee contestant, Sage Kelly. And the parents said they did have some guests coming over for dinner tonight. They weren't sure they were going to be able to make it. But Sage Kelly has represented New Brighton very well. As a 6th grader, she actually took first place in the county spelling bee. And it wasn't held. And then I think the state championship was canceled that year because it was right before COVID. And so it didn't happen in 7th grade. And then she was keen to represent us again as an 8th grader and placed 3rd. And she'll have at least one more year because the division that she entered in is 7th, 8th, and 9th. So she'll get a chance to compete as a 9th grader, but that'll probably be for Soquel High. But she represented us very well and was very enthusiastic about the spelling bee. And I'm very thankful to the County Office of Education and particularly Sophia Sorensen for the work that she did. We had to transition from an in-place to a virtual spelling bee, and that was quite a bit of work on her part, but we made sure that New Brighton was represented, 2 in the elementary and 2 in the secondary.
Awesome. Thank you, Principal Broadhurst.
Thank you. I want to show off. I do have the certificate because I have a color printer at home and it's exciting. And I don't know, of course, I don't like have screen sharing or anything, but this is a really cool certificate. I love the bees everywhere. I'm not sure if that's Linda's creativity, but it's an awesome certificate. So even though Sage couldn't make it, an awesome certificate's on the way.
Yes, and the family did receive the certificate. I sent that on to them as well. But I'll get a color hard copy and present that to her at school.
And I just want to be sure, because we have a tile named SUESD board meeting, and I'm not sure who that is.
That's my second computer.
Got it. Just wanted to be sure. I figured it was something like that, but didn't want to overlook anybody. All right. Well, thank you again, Principal Broadhurst, and congratulations, Sage, and everybody who participated in the spelling bee, because that's really what matters, is giving it the college try and using it as a learning experience.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you, Principal Broadhurst. All right. We're going to move on to our public hearing. And we're going to hold a public hearing regarding the 2021-22 Comprehensive School Safety Plan Part 1. Scott, did you want to say any words?
Yes. So later tonight, I'll be asking the board to consider approving the Comprehensive School Safety Plan Part 1 as a first step in this process, and in an effort to make sure that any public comment on the plan is able to be received. We are also having a public hearing on the item to begin with. So later I'll go into more detail in reviewing the plan. Right now, the plan is listed twice in the docket, and here after the public hearing notice, it's listed so that if there's any public comment on it in this public hearing, now would be the time to do that.
Great, I'll open up the hearing, 6:43. Oops, do we have anyone on text, Zoom, or email who would like to comment?
Nobody on text.
Nobody on email.
No one on Zoom.
All right, I'm just gonna hold it open for a little while longer, just in case someone's trying to connect. All right, it seems as though we do not have anyone present. Okay, great, then I'm going to go ahead and close our public hearing item at 6:44 p.m. So the hearing is now closed, and we're going to move on to public communications. As listed in the agenda, there are several ways to make your comment for public communications. These are for items that are not listed on our agenda. Any item that is listed on the agenda, you would comment at the time of the agenda item. So if anyone is here and would like to make a comment on a non-agenda item, we will accept those now. And do we have anyone on text, email, or Zoom?
There's nothing on text.
No one on email.
No one in Zoom.
Okay, we're going to move on to our standing reports. We'll start with our assistant superintendents. And Michelle, I see your square first, if you're ready. If not, Jessica.
I'm ready to go. Good evening, board. On this fabulous and wonderful weathered week we've been having. We've been just so blessed. I just love where we live. I get the best. I'm in the mountains for my home and get to work down by the ocean for my job. So just was great. This has been a fun-filled couple of weeks of webinars for me. And so I had a webinar, well, it was an interactive, I should say, a webinar regarding leaves that the County Office of Education put on through their lawyer and her interpretation of all leaves and all the new guidance and rules regarding leave and what's available to our employees. I would like to say that our human resources department is small but mighty, of two, and predominantly leaves are handled through their department, but through payroll, they do touch my world as well. So I try to stay proficient on leaves. The document that the COE presented us with was 100 pages long, and it was in regards to every leave available possible. So it was great, but I'm not going to lie, I didn't read 100 pages of it. I did read the section in regards to the governor's proposal and now passed bill regarding the COVID additional supplemental COVID sick leave that's being offered. So we did receive some good clarification through the lawyers today for us to be able to put something comprehensive out. So that was a really great training. It's just a lot on leaves. There's a lot of leaves. I had another webinar in regards to federal funding and how we can spend that, specifically our ESSER monies and what is tied state regulations as opposed to federal regulations and how those go hand in hand and the reporting requirements. And part of that webinar was embedded regarding negotiations and, the ability to be able to, someone in my position, to communicate the difference between one-time money, restricted money, general fund money, and how that's used in that setting. So they were all great. I learned a lot. So I was appreciative of having the time to be able to listen in on some of those, as well as catching up on some of the trailer language that the governor has in his proposed budget, which was really interesting to learn the details of some of the proposals that are being presented that I shared with the board at the last board meeting. So this goes into greater detail. And some of these programs, I'm not going to lie, there's a lot of work that goes behind being able to get this money, but it's very exciting. There are some funding in areas we haven't seen in a long time. I would have preferred personally that we got it in the base because it's a lot easier for us to manage on our side of the house, but the money and its intent are well purposed. So it was really exciting to read some of that language. Yvette, our payroll technician for the district, has had her baby, and so she is on maternity leave, and we're so happy for her. A little Oscar was born last week, so she's very excited. And with that, we're a little short-staffed in the business department right now with Yvette off on maternity leave, and our vacancy, our director position. So Janet Lindenbaum has come out of retirement, yes, and has agreed to help us. And so she's amazing. 2 days of Janet is like 5 days of someone. She's just amazing.
So how many times has she come out of retirement?
This is the first official time.
Oh, okay.
The second time wasn't official.
Oh, okay.
So we are so happy to have Janet with us. Like I said, she's a couple days a week out of retirement, and she's helping the business department out, and I'm so thankful for that. George Lopez and I have been working on IC enrollment, and that was launched last week, and for predominantly our TK and K registration, but open enrollment to any grade level. It's actually been very exciting. I am not proficient in Infinite Campus, so this was a great crash course in learning what this system has to offer and being able to really dig in there and look at each component of an enrollment. And so George had the ability to present to the front office staff as if he was a parent registering their child. We were able to see in real time, look at everything and decide what was best in, logistical purposes for when a parent is registering. And we were able to update some of our forms and get them into Spanish and get them uploaded. So it's been a great process. And our work with Climate Tech, still we're ongoing. It's exciting, right now, still behind the scenes, but, come this summer, there's going to be a lot of work going on our campuses, which I'm really excited about. And hopefully for the next board meeting, I'll have a proposal for the board in regards to our window RFP that had gone out. We had to delay the RFP and give our contractors who were bidding on the project some additional time, some of the complexities in the lovely, but 10s to 30 wings has complicated what we are able to do just based on the sheer size of those windows and the structural impact that it's going to have. So we want to just make sure we get the best bid possible to present to the board. So that's business in a nutshell for you.
All right. Thank you so much, Michelle. And hello, Jessica.
Greetings. It's great to see everyone again. The Ed Services side of the world is always exciting. And I will not share anything that Michelle shared already, but we have a lot of items that are cooperative items. But I will add just a few of the things that we've been working on. So I'm excited to announce that we had a DLI school visit with a small team from our district visiting Pajaro Valley. We visited Freedom Elementary School. And our team was comprised of our Ed Services team and a teacher and a principal and a student services representative. And it was just, we had a great team, a great time, but I have to hand it to Pajaro Valley too. They had some amazing representatives at our disposal. They had directors, they had the assistant superintendent, they had the principal, they had teachers. It was just a fantastic visit. And we have more visits to come, but it was just really an outstanding time to listen and learn. Also, last week, we had our first summer school reflection and planning team meeting. Yes, February, we're planning for summer, and that's exciting. And our work does coincide with Michelle's department because Climate Tech's work over the summer will impact what we're able to offer, but we will not give any less effort. We will just be looking at spaces differently. Also, Michelle and I are partners in our attendance of the Superintendent's Academy. We had last Friday night and Saturday that we spent with our Superintendent's Academy peers. And the focus of that academy this weekend was really on communications. It went from catastrophic communication to, really local issue communications and how to do that effectively and responsibly. So we really enjoyed it. We've also had our ADCO Racial Justice Task Force meeting this past week, which was great to re-engage in that work and kind of reignite our excitement, enthusiasm for really racial justice and equity in our district. Last week, we also engaged in SCA negotiations, and of course, that's always a way to open doors to new opportunities. So that was great to be involved with that. I was able to work on the California State Pivotal Practice Award application last week. And we submitted it on Friday, the date it was due. So hopefully we'll find out by the end of the year what they thought of our application. So we think our district is amazing. Hopefully they will think so too. And then George, Christine, and I had the opportunity to meet with Infinite Campus in person this week, and we were talking about some of our ongoing issues and some recent issues. It was just really good to see a person and really kind of talk through some things with him. And then as recently as today, I was honored to host our district leadership team meeting, and we talked about a variety of things. We did some updates with some of our new programs, some updates on existing programs, some staff survey input that we got, professional development, subcommittee work groups. So it was really informative. It's a short meeting, 1 hour. We packed a lot into that time, but we were 40 members strong today. So even at this time of year, when we're really feeling like there was a lot going on, we had a high level of participation, and it was a great group. So those are just some of the things happening in our world, and always good things to come, but I just love it.
Thank you so much for the update. Now we'll move on to Scott.
Thank you, Amanda. And it's always hard to follow my two colleagues because they do such amazing work, and they also steal all my thunder. So, I'll try not to belabor points that they've already made, but I probably will touch on a couple of things. First, the DLT meeting, the district leadership team meeting, as Jessica mentioned, was fabulous today. A lot packed into just 1 hour, and a good overview of all that's happening in the district, as well as, like Jessica said, getting input from that team, which is really the core purpose of that team, is to get input from them as they help make decisions for the district. And although I know it's an item later on the agenda, I might not get a chance to say it at that time. So I wanted to take a moment now to say congratulations, Michelle, on the audit and having 0 findings. That is pretty amazing and pretty rare. And it's like one of those things, sometimes it only gets attention when there's problems. And so just a super clean audit like that is something to really be proud of. So in terms of what's happening with COVID, we'll make a transition to that. Of course, there was an announcement earlier this week regarding masks, and how the lifting of the mask mandate in the general public does or does not relate to schools. Right now, we are status quo regarding masks in schools. We're wearing them indoors. It's mandatory indoors and optional outdoors, so no change right now. We are expecting further communication from the California Department of Public Health on February 28th. We don't know exactly what that communication will be like. One thing we've learned in dealing with all things COVID is stay nimble and flexible, and keep abreast of the data these next 2 weeks. We'll see what the CDPH says. We'll work like we have throughout these last 2 years with the other 9 districts in this county, which of course I'm very grateful for, because it allows different minds to get in the room, ask the difficult questions, vet decisions, and move with as much consistency as possible, given the different sizes of our districts and everything. I think that's been accomplished along the way. We'll continue to try to accomplish that. So status quo on masks for now, more to come in a couple of weeks. A couple things were already mentioned. We had a couple of interactions with SEA recently, and in the membership meeting, being able to answer some questions at the end of their meeting. That forum is always appreciated to keep the lines of communication open. Never take that for granted. And then we also had a negotiation session, as was mentioned previously, and got to meet our new CTA regional representative, Josh Cobb. So it was nice to make a connection with Josh as we move forward in negotiations. Last week, Jessica and Carissa and I were able to attend the countywide Green Schools meeting, which is really well orchestrated by the COE staff there, in that they bring in representatives from around the state. This one last week was from Encinitas, in a school district that has done some model work with Green Schools and really taken a systemic approach. And so we're able to learn from model examples across the state, I'm sorry. And then we are also able to have some time to brainstorm with our own team, and then to make connections with different agencies across the county that may be able to help facilitate our work. We like to look at it from a district-wide perspective, but kind of always using the SAGE program at Santa Cruz Gardens as kind of our prototype program when it comes to green schools and environmental awareness. We had the LCAP Community Forum, which although didn't have a high number of attendees last week, I thought was well orchestrated. And I just want to say in this forum, I've already said it in others, how much I appreciated the entire administrative team putting together the presentation, being available, and just really providing an overview of the district and how all the different parts fit together to make the best available services for our students and families. Also, as was mentioned, registration for 22-23 has started, and a lot of great work has gone into that, as was previously mentioned, with the new student system. And I really appreciate all the work that has been done with the front office staff and by the front office staff. They give us great insight, obviously, from the very front lines of how to make sure everything that's in our student system is set up in a way that is usable and meaningful for parents. And it's very exciting to kind of see this vision of different programs besides just our generally great schools. Now we have the SAGE program to kind of take into consideration, and dual language immersion and the home-based learning model, and kind of seeing that vision of both generally great schools with some specific programs to make our district competitive in all areas. And so that's something I think we can all be very proud of. I'm almost done. We continue to seek input on our mission statement process. So we have what's called the Mission Statement Kickstarter team, and already a draft has been developed that really tries to take in the best of the existing mission statement, also and infuse that with some new ideas. And so, for example, today in the district leadership team, we put that out there and just asking all members of that team, like whatever forum you have, wherever you're in front of other stakeholders in the district, get that out there. Let nobody be surprised that we're going through this process, and also get their feedback so that when ultimately we bring it to the board to get their input and ultimate consideration, it's been vetted all the way throughout the whole system. And then finally, today I had the pleasure and privilege to visit Santa Cruz Gardens with Ted and with Principal Carissa, and it was an enjoyable experience as always. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Awesome update. All right. We're going to move on to see if we have a report from CSEA. And I believe I saw Enrique on. All right. There you are. Great.
Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. Just a small report. The CSEA members are still inquiring on the summer assistance program. I know Ms. Kennedy told me it would be sometime in February. We just don't want to miss out on that opportunity. We want to take advantage of that. So I just wanted to let you know. We also had a meeting February 14th where we all voted on our proposal. Ms. Kennedy received it, said that she'll send it to the board. Hopefully the board will approve that. So March 2nd, and we can move forward with our bargaining proposal. And Ms. Kennedy, I will give you some dates soon. And that's all I have.
All right. Thanks so much for the report. And
You're
I
very
believe I
welcome.
saw. Thanks. Have a good night. Sorry, I'm kind of bad at going through my squares. I thought I saw Gordon.
Gordon is here.
There you are. Okay.
Hey,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Hey, happy Wednesday. I'll try to be short as well, like Enrique was, although there's been a lot going on with SEA over the last couple of weeks. As Scott mentioned, we have a new CTA staff representative, Josh Cobb, who really have enjoyed working with so far. Josh was previously the regional representative in Fresno, I believe. It's somewhere in the Central Valley. And now I'm blanking on what town he was working in. But yeah, he's really, really experienced, as a really great mind for negotiations and organizing and bargaining and he's yeah, been a really great resource for our team thus far, and seemed, you know, really on board and committed. So it's been really great working with Josh. Like Scott and Michelle or Jessica mentioned, we had our general meeting on Monday. A lot of things came up. Sorry, last Monday, the 7th. We talked about a lot of things, including the new proposed leave for COVID. We talked about people's concerns with the Delta dental insurance, which we receive. I guess it's not being covered by a lot of local dentists. We talked about the plan for universal TK and some questions that came up around that, which Jessica and Scott were able to answer at the admin meeting. We talked about tables at New Brighton Middle School, which Michelle was also able to discuss with us at the second portion of that meeting. We talked about SEA nominations, which have just ended, I believe on Tuesday. So that's our open nomination period for this year's SEA elections. So that's exciting. And I'm not on the elections committee, obviously, as the president. So I don't know what the status are right now of those nominations, but I do know people were nominated for just about every one of our positions. So that's pretty cool. We also discussed admin surveys, which are administrator surveys, which SEA has conducted every year since 2010. And interestingly enough, we have the, you know, historical data to sort of look back at past surveys, and we try to keep everything pretty consistent. So we didn't make any changes this year aside from taking the words distance learning out of one question on the principals and administrators surveys. But we talked about that at our meeting and just sent those out on Friday. Like was talked about, we also had a bargaining session on Wednesday, which I felt was very productive. We discussed a lot of issues in the 2-hour session. I think maybe, you know, all around, literally everything you could imagine, we discussed in that 2-hour session. So a lot of things, which was very productive. So feeling great about that. And yeah, that's it for the SEA report today.
Thank you so much. A lot of good information. Now we'll move on to the trustees and see if any of my trustee colleagues have anything to report. And go ahead and just unmute yourself if you'd like to report out.
Go ahead. So I attended the Racial Justice Task Force, and I know that's an item later on. And also the community forum, which I thought was very informative. There's so much information into such a short period of time, and just very nice collaboration and smooth transition. So it was great to be there. Do wish that there had been more people there, but I think we did the best we could with advertising the event. And so it was great to hear from all the administrators. So thank you for that. That's it from me.
I'll hop in. So today I visited Santa Cruz Gardens, and right behind me is a piece, an art piece from Wyatt, who is a 3rd grader. When we went into the art room, the kids had already left, and I saw this piece sitting, and it just reminded me. I'm trying to remember, maybe Midnight in Paris or whatever, but you know, just the detail of the artwork is quite amazing. And I didn't get to meet Wyatt, but on the other hand, it's just a really good piece, and also a lot of great artwork in the classroom. You know, walking into Santa Cruz Gardens is quite welcoming. Like I mentioned, is that they have the board with every language, which is hello, and it's very inviting. So Scott and Chris and I walked the campus and looked at the Life Lab and just looked inside different rooms. The music room's awesome. Diane happened to just pop in there with the students and a nice drum set. If there was nobody there, man, I was gonna hop on that thing. And then we, in the front, I believe it's part of the SAGE program, but what's really impressive is that they want to re-landscape the front area, and then the kids are actually writing persuasive letters to companies to get donations of plants, and which is great. So they're doing letter writing and sending them off. So I'm really interested to see how that really turns out. And I mean, the whole campus is, you could jump in, Scott, if you want, but the whole campus, it's a nice campus. I asked Chris, why is every room blue? You know, thinking blue is very inviting. It's the school color, but then also it's a very, I think, a calming color too, also. And then later on in the day, I actually met with Eric Olson and met Jennifer Soto Reinhardt. I've never been in tune with a special education program and with the special ed staff, and had a great candid chat with them. Actually, when I showed up, I was on the wrong end of the campus. And so I was walking to where the room was and class got out. So I had my backpack on and, you know, walking with the students. I think with my hair, I didn't, you know, it wasn't 21 Jump Street, you know, stand out or anything like that. But it was, you know, the kids were just moving right along. It was a great atmosphere. But inside the office is really nice too, and just kind of went over some of the tests and what's being done. And again, I mean, from our presentation from a couple meetings ago, it always reminds me of that, you know, no child left behind should not be with Bush, but with the district, because they work with every kid. So, I mean, no child is left behind. As far as a special with special ed staff. And, you know, we have a really good program. It's really impressive. So I'm proud. I'm very proud of our district. And that's it.
Thank you, Ted. It's nice to hear. And yeah, you know, and I love thinking about everyone collaborating on the mission statement and how that's just such a key piece of it, right? Every single child is, you know, seen for who they are and valued and given the full opportunity to develop into, you know, who they're going to be and given all the resources they need. So totally appreciate that. I don't have much new to report. I'll just echo what Carolyn said about attending those same meetings. And then tomorrow at the County Office of Education, there is a meeting. It's them acting as the county commission. I forget the exact full name. Scott can correct me if he needs to, but there is a meeting for them to potentially take action on our trustee area elections process. So I'll be attending that tomorrow at 3:30. And that's it from me. Scott, I don't know if you wanted to say anything.
Is that an open session item or is it closed session?
So my understanding is it's a separate commission, so it's before their board meeting. And so what our Elise, our legal counsel, has asked is that just 2 board members attend, just to be extra safe on the side of the Brown Act.
So basically it's an open meeting with the commission, right?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay.
Okay, Phil.
So, and I will be attending that meeting too if I get a link. So, I have 3 things to report out on the 3rd. I attended a CSBA delegate assembly meeting for our region. Our region goes down to south of San Luis Obispo. 2 things that came out of it. There was some happiness about some improvement in the unemployment percentage that we're getting charged. So, yeah, but not back to where it was. So a good thing. And the other one is, and this is for Linda, Chris Reef, R-E-E-F-E, is the CSBA legislative director and a Santa Cruz High School grad. So let's dial them up. The other thing I did was I went to the forum on continuous operations of critical facilities. And the best part of that was a presentation by Santa Barbara USD about them building out a mini grid at 4 of their schools. And so one of the things I learned though is a VOR. It's value of resilience. And you do a VOR calculation to apply for grants and to show that your project is going to pencil out. And the other thing are tier levels. Tier 1 is got to have it. Tier 3 would be nice to have. So you rate all of your needs for energy and things like that and give it a tier assignment. The last one was the LCAP community forum. Loved it. I'm glad we're doing it. Way back, this board made a commitment to have more communications with the public, and the community forum was one of the key things. And we have continued to have a community forum ever since we made that commitment. And so I'm glad we did it. We're getting very good at it. So thank you for that. And I believe that's it for me. Thanks.
All right, thanks. Anything else from anyone? Okay, looks like we are good to move on to our first presentation item, which is item 9A, discussion regarding racial justice and educational equity.
Thank you, Board President. So I'm very proud and appreciative of the work our task force has continued to be engaged with, working with consultants Nicole Anderson and Shelley Holt on this very important topic of racial justice and educational equity. I want to thank the members of that team for their tireless efforts. These folks are doing it on their own accord without pay, just because they're passionate about the work. So I'll just give a very brief summary, not intended to be exhaustive tonight, and won't capture the totality of the effort, but try to hit some of the highlights. So the foundation of our work so far has really been kind of inner work, ensuring that as different leaders in the district, we analyze our own thinking and potential biases as we venture slowly out to lead the work across the district. In the Racial Justice Task Force, we met most recently on February 7th. Thank you, Amanda and Carolyn, for being there to see the work firsthand and engage in the work firsthand. And so we're kind of shifting from that inner work to putting the focus on the 3 subcommittees that the task force has developed, and that's on staffing, student discipline, and academic curriculum. I'm part of the staffing subcommittee. I'm very honored to work with parent Marilyn Himes, who's on that committee, and then our own Sandra Paredes. And so we're meeting in between sessions to continue the work. And just to use that subcommittee as an example, we're kind of trying to really look at both broad and narrow ways to continue the effort. The overall effort of that subcommittee is to create a better pathway for people of color to be represented ultimately amongst our teachers and staff. And so we got down, like in some of the more granular pieces, asked ourselves, what can we put in place to make sure that our interview process includes persons of color, for example, so that we don't lose that lens during the interview and hiring process. And then kind of more global next steps to take a look at existing models where school districts and universities have linkages that create like a pre-identified pathway for persons of color to be hired as teachers and staff. So really trying to, cover both kind of big picture items, but then also asking us what specifically could we put in place in the next few months, to consistently improve in our efforts towards equity in this staffing department. The student discipline committee is looking to really create more consistent practices across all of our sites, with the thinking that more consistent and objective we can be in this area, the less likely that any one person, and in this case, any one administrator's own personal biases may inadvertently create a situation where different students from different backgrounds get treated differently, even with the same behavior issues. And so really trying to take some of those, just be cognizant of the biases we may bring to the work, and then try to create systems that create consistency to help as much as possible to remove those biases. The academic, and that committee will be working with Director Student Services, Eric Olson, to continue that work as well. The curriculum subcommittee, reaching out to work with Jessica, who I know is very excited about the work. It's right in her wheelhouse, and really wants to further the efforts that have already been started around culturally responsive teaching, for example, as well as taking a look at some of our existing materials and textbooks and seeing whether there, may be either biases embedded or, holes that should be addressed, in an effort to make sure that all backgrounds are taken into account. So subcommittees, as I said, are meeting on their own. And then as a whole group for the Racial Justice Task Force will meet next on March 7th. Besides just the Racial Justice Task Force, this work is being continued with our administrative team, as mentioned in an earlier report. And that yesterday we met, had a great meeting. It's one of those meetings where the 2 hours went by really fast, so you know it was a good meeting. Our ADCO team met with both Nicole and Shelley, and was really a good chance to dive back into the work. Even though, we continue it in a lot of other forums, in all of Jessica's meetings, with, for example, the principal's leadership team, we definitely always have an equity lens, but this is that work that's, 100% focused on that. So in ADCO, again, really trying to work from the inside out, doing a lot of self-reflection. A specific example is that we're going to be doing, each one of us is going to be doing a non-discriminatory behavior checklist from the Anti-Defamation League. And so again, it's this kind of balance between looking inward and then seeing how we can apply some of that learning in our work with our staff and in our leadership efforts. We challenge our own biases as we do that kind of internal work. Next steps for administrators very specifically is what Nicole calls a 10-minute challenge. And that's just to bake into the next meeting that each one of us leads as an administrator, 10 minutes of an item focused on equity. And that's regardless of how busy the meeting is or how much is to cover and how limited the time is, figuring out at minimum 10 minutes to bake in to the next meeting that we lead. So I really like how we're taking, some of this inward work and doing small chunks as we get more and more ready to lead the work with the rest of our staff. The great thing is I know our staff is hungry and ready for this, so it'll be well received. Of course, the governance team, this board will be engaging in the work a week from tonight and continuing your efforts with Nicole and her team. And so we'll be reading The Governance Core, a book by Davis Campbell and Michael Fullen, to study and self-reflect on our work as a governance team. And just always with that, shared moral imperative of being an anti-racist organization, and really putting that desire, to concrete work. And all of those aforementioned 4 groups work with the same agreements. This is the common thread amongst everybody. And the 4 agreements are: stay engaged, experience discomfort, speak your truth, and accept non-closure. And so I'm just very appreciative of how all of these groups are actively engaged in the work across the district. And I'm confident that as we do our own internal work, that we'll be able to have that flower more and more across the district as was the original goal. So I'll be glad to entertain any questions or comments from the board now.
All right, I'll jump in, and thank you, Scott. That was a really great, thorough update on everything. And again, so appreciate the work of the team, and everything that you said just really, again, brought to mind the incredible value in having the facilitators that we've hired, because while we all have the intention to do the work, having someone giving us, guiding us in this way, and really then pushing us with, the 10-minute challenge, with reading the chapters in the book for our meeting next week, etc. Having that kind of accountability and guidance, and someone to guide us in that way, I think is just invaluable. So really appreciating that as we move along, and having the opportunity to attend the task force meetings and watch the committees at work is again, just really inspiring to see the change that people are working towards, and again, honoring those 4 agreements as they actually really dive into the work. Thank you.
I'll just piggyback on what you said, Amanda, having attended the Racial Justice Task Force meeting as well. It's nice that we always start with kind of a small group discussion, and usually 2 or 3 people, and it just really kind of gives us opportunity to share thoughts and struggles and things like that. And I think one of the things that came out during that small group discussion for many people is just wanting to see concrete things that are happening. And it was great that Dr. Holt, one of the people that is guiding us through this whole process, just kind of reminded us all that we need to make sure that we go slow to go fast. So I think that was a good reminder to everyone, just because we want to see all the changes happen yesterday. So that was helpful. And thank you, Scott, for a great summary. It just seems like there's a lot of good things happening. So thank you for that.
I definitely
Any other questions?
Oh, no, I just want to say I definitely appreciate the summary. And Scott, you've always said the go slow, go fast a lot. And Carolyn, you saying that right now, it is really important that the work takes time. And so I appreciate you mentioning that, and also hearing all of the great work that's going on. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else from other board members? Are we ready to check in and see if we have any public comments? Let's see. All right, looks like we're ready to check in, see if we have any comments or questions from the public.
Nothing on text.
Nothing on email.
No one on Zoom.
All right, thank you all. We'll move on to item 9B, discussion with regarding updates on our LCAP supplement. Thank you, Jessica.
Greetings again, President Jackson Miller and our Board of Trustees. This discussion item tonight is the supplement to the annual update to the 21-22 LCAP. It is a new state accountability document, and we see new documents all the time, but this is one of those, and it does serve as a mid-year checkpoint for the 21-22 LCAP. And while we do sometimes begrudgingly engage in these extra reports, it was really a good reflective time for us to spend together. So what you'll see in this supplement is 5 prompts, and those include like a tandem brief accounting of supplemental funds spent and or earmarked to be spent up until this point, as well as their alignment to our LCAP, and finally, of course, the required inclusion of directions. As you can also see, the major focus in this document is educational partnership and engagement, metrics and data, and aligned use of ESSER funds, educator effectiveness funds, Budget Act funds, and concentration funds. While we don't qualify for concentration funds, the other sources do apply. And engaging in this work, we were able to see some highlights. We really took a look at our LCAP again, and we unforeseen or foreseen really were able to forecast the potential needs and the real needs of the SUESD community in our LCAP forum that the board passed last summer. As we sifted through the LCAP, we were able to look at areas to celebrate. We have increased counseling. We have our EL TOSA that's continued. We have district-wide one-to-one technology. We have leveled literacy and primary language literature. We have increased aid support, an extra zero period, integrated arts and science specialists, and so much more. So in going through this mid-year checkpoint and writing this plan, we're really happy to see the results and the fruits of the labor of our district at large. While this plan doesn't require approval, it is here for your viewing, and it does need to be added to our LCAP that we'll present to you at the end of the school year. And does also include a brief update and overview, budget overview from our business partner, Michelle, who will kind of just give a little tidbit, and then we'll be able to answer some questions that you might have.
All right, thank you so much, Jessica. Hello, board again. Jessica and I are, we're coming together on this one. I'd like to start by saying how grateful I am with our partnership with the County Office of Education. I struggled with the financial part of this because as you read through this document, it is a very narrative document and it's supposed to tell a story, which, you know, Jessica did so lovely. And I couldn't figure out how to then put the clunkiness of the budget into it as it was intended to be. So, which brings us to my point, which is on page 4 of the 9-page document, where it starts with a description of how the LEA is using the fiscal resources received in 21-22 school year in a manner that is consistent with the applicable plans and aligned with its LEA's 21-22 LCAP and annual update. So in essence, that is translated into what did your LCAP start with and what is your LCAP now forming into based on funds that you didn't know you were going to receive when the LCAP was originally written. And so in our particular case, that would be our educator effectiveness grant funds, our ESSER 3 funds, about $430,000 for educator effectiveness, which is geared towards PD, and our ESSER 3 funds, which is roughly $2 million, and it's to and all the areas that are in each of these goals it can be applicable to. So in our particular case, under goal 1 in our LCAP, which is all students receive equitable, inclusive, culturally responsive, and rigorous high quality classroom instruction with standard-based curriculum that promotes life, college, and or readiness. So under that, you will see it delineated. And personally, I like this delineation a lot better than the very long LCAP document itself, where it's just not as eloquent as this. You can see goal 1 has 7 points to it. Each of those categories has a dollar amount that we originally set in the LCAP when it was created at the end of last school year. Under goal 1, that would have been roughly $220,000 that the district put towards goal 1 under these 7 points. So the LCAP in and of itself isn't our entire budget. It's just a compilation of predominantly our supplemental funding that we receive, and then how we enhance that with additional funding. Could be general fund, Title I, lottery, instructional materials, the whole gamut of monies we receive. So if we take goal 1 into consideration, we have done these things and we've been able to enhance them. The monies we set aside for instructional materials and primary language, I believe was only about $5,000 in our original LCAP, if I remember correctly. And we've been able to enhance that greatly. We've been able to enhance the dual language immersion curricula based on the additional funding we've received in other areas. So this update is to let the public know that not only are we implementing the goals that we set forth to, but we received additional funding to enhance those goals. Under goal 2, through the use of data, identify research-based classroom differentiation, professional development, and systemic, equitable, inclusive, and culturally responsive supports needed to close present and predictable achievement gaps. Goodness, I am so sorry tonight. Normally I can read and speak a lot better than I just did in that one sentence. Under goal 2 in our LCAP, we had put roughly $1.4 million under each of these 21 areas that we've identified. I can tell you, and these identifiable areas, we have been able to enhance that by our infusion of additional COVID relief funding, and which is really great. I know we talked about earlier the integrated arts specialist positions, and that was originally written for 1 year into our LCAP. So we are able to enhance that when we start our LCAP for next year. If we look at goal 3, all schools will be safe, equitable, inclusive, culturally responsive, welcoming environments that engage the entire community of staff, students, and families in strength-oriented partnerships that support learning for all. Under these 6 points, we have roughly $140,000 set aside in our current LCAP. And again, a lot of in goal 3 is a lot of community outreach and a lot of programs that we're able to do through partnerships. And so it's a benefit to us. The funding doesn't necessarily, because we have so many partnerships, we don't necessarily have to put the large amount of funding towards that because we're able to get resources in this area. But it's nice that we're now able to enhance all of these areas with the additional funding that we are receiving. So in a long-winded way, I've just let the board know that we're fulfilling each of our goals and being able to enhance them with additional funding resources. So anybody has any?
I'm sorry to have, I was just going to say, I'm sorry to have given you so many points. But I think it's really fantastic that you illustrated how we're really funding those appropriately. So thank you for that. Any questions or comments from the board?
Yes, thank you both for all your hard work with this. And yes, those lists are really helpful. I really appreciate them. So thank you.
Can you repeat what you said? No, just kidding. Thanks for the presentation. Yeah, you put a lot of work into this. Thank you very much. And some words I can't pronounce either, so.
I don't know why goal 2 just would not come out. I'm so sorry.
No need to apologize.
Goal 2. Stay away from goal 2. Thank you.
I think sometimes we also need to, acknowledge the fact that most of us are on, hour 12 of work or whatever it is. Like we are human beings, and no, it was a really, really helpful presentation. I found it to be a really helpful document, and I appreciate both of you for walking us through it a little bit. And how it's so nice to be able to have these funds and put them towards these really important goals. And again, just really, really grateful. Anything else from the rest of the team before we open it up to the public? All right, sorry, I had to change my view of the squares to make sure I could see everyone. All right, I don't see anything else from the board. Do we have any public comment on this?
There's nothing on text.
No one on email.
No one on Zoom.
Okay, thank you. Then let's move on to our first action item, which is to consider accepting our very exciting annual fiscal audit.
All right. Hopefully I don't fumble over my words on this one. Good evening again. I am here to present our 2021 audit. Due to COVID, the 1920 audit and the 2021 audits were both delayed for filing purposes. And so normally this would have been brought to the board in January, and that's why I'm bringing it to the board at our February session. And all appropriate filings have been made. I'd like to acknowledge Siobhan and Associates. They are our auditors. They have been our auditors for 9 years now since I've joined the district. I enjoy the partnership with them. I really enjoy the responsiveness. They are not just come in, 3 times a year and look at the books and then be gone. I can email or call them at any time, any one of their principal auditors, and get our questions answered in real time. So I'm very appreciative of just that there are auditors and that they're very responsive auditors. So just a little background, every year I try to mix it up for you guys on my presentation of the audit, because I know it's fabulous and exciting to me, but 100 pages of this information can read a little dry. So I thought I would just start with what is the audit and the purpose of it, and why do we have to have it? So we are audited by an independent auditing firm is what they are called, but they are hired by the district. But it is their sole purpose to audit our books to make sure we're in good standing and we're doing everything we need to do in regards to what is called GASB, and that's the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. So that is everything that we are governed by and what we need to follow. And so within this document, you will see multiple areas that they touch upon that we are audited on. One area is attendance, which is sometimes I find interesting when, from my standpoint, I'm thinking of only financial, where financially we receive all of our money through our ADA. So it only makes sense. Our auditors would audit that, seeing as that's how we generate our funding for the district. In a normal year, in the document itself, it would show that we are in compliance with instructional minutes and days and all of the things that go along with the funding. But because of 2021 was a hold harmless kind of year that didn't count in a lot of purposes, we were not audited on necessarily that fact alone. We were audited on engagement and other factors that went into what considered to be attendance, which I pleasantly and happily to say we've passed all areas in our attendance. They also audit us in all of our federal funding. If a district receives over $750,000 in federal funding in any given year, it triggers an automatic federal funding investigation, as they call it, but really it's just an audit of the money we receive from the federal government to make sure that all those dollars are spent appropriately. A part of receiving federal funding is that we have to do what's called timekeeping for anyone who is funded out of a federal program, and they have to certify that the work that they're doing is actually the work that they were hired for that qualifies for the funding that they were paid under. So another area that we've passed with flying colors. They also audit our free and reduced applications. They work with our child nutrition services. CNS receives its own annual audit from yet another agency, but our annual audit does include the program and the free and reduced applications. They pull random sample applications out of our pile, and they actually do verifications that the applications are legitimate and that we have appropriately put them into our system and the families qualify for the services that they receive. They look at our cash handling. They look at our cash flow and how we, I mean, a lot of people, it's funny because we are a business and we do run like a business. And there are times when we have no cash. And in years past, cash flow is a problem. And depending on how your district receives its funding, if you're, as we are, we're heavily on property taxes. So we get our tax teeters in December and April. And there are times that we need to bridge the gap with cash borrowing. So they look at that and they make sure that we're appropriately letting the County Office of Education know our forecasting and when we might need to do that borrowing, and that we're fiscally solvent, because we may say that we have $2 million, but until we get the cash from the county, we don't really have it. So another area they look at, separation of duties within the department, specifically the business department. We are a very tiny department. When you only have one AP person and one payroll person, it's really hard to have separation of duties because somebody has to be somebody's, check and balance. And, so we try to keep a really strong separation of duties on top of the fact that we delineate everything we do so that the auditors do know that even though there may not be, like in some districts, 10 people looking at a document, that the people who are looking at the document are doing it fiduciously. Long-term debt, they look at our bond, our sale of our bonds. They look at what that impact has on our rating, because we are like any other entity. We are rated on our, I guess you would call our what a normal would be. What is your experience score? What do you rate? That's basically how we are rated. They check and make sure that we're following all of what needs to be done behind the scenes for long-term debt, and that if, like in our particular case, we had non-voter approved debt, that the district is fiscally able to pay that money back on schedule. They look at another component, which a lot of people don't think about, which is vacation payout. And in our district, that is a small amount of money, but in large districts, that can be a substantial amount of their budget for vacation that's accrued and not used through the year, specifically for classified staff. That has to be paid out, and we have to accrue that on our books year over year. So we look to make sure that if everybody at the same time wanted their vacation payout, we would have the fiscal ability to be able to do that. They look at litigation and where we are. If the district has any pending litigation, they send letters to each of the law firms that we work with and ask them to give their opinion if we are in the middle of or are going to be going into any form of litigation that might have a financial impact on the district. And that's also incorporated in this document. And another area they look at is, in our particular case, our JPAs. And in our case, that's our insurance and property and liability JPA and our workers' comp JPA. We have to give them the audited books from each of these JPAs that they then audit themselves to make sure that those JPAs are fiscally responsible and that we can move on with them and they are not in distress, which would put us in distress. So with all that said, that's kind of an overview and the highlight of budget as it is. There's just a couple of areas within the budget, this budget report itself, that I wanted to point out before I wrap up for you guys. And that is, in this year, GASB has, they every year they have new GASBs. This is GASB 84, and it is outside entities or non-accounting standards. And in our particular case, that would mean our ASB account. And so our middle school carries an ASB account that we actually run through the district office to make sure all the processes are handled correctly. Now, and that's handled through Santa Cruz County Bank because it's kept in a separate bank account. It's always been considered a separate entity. The new GASB 84 requires that we bring that into the district, and it's within its own resource and within its own fund. And we have to do all the appropriate journal entries as if we brought that in as a brand new account. So that was one of the major changes that we had to work with them on, because that was a little bit, because there are entries in the book and there's no actual cash behind it. That's just all accounting entries to be in compliance. Also, a couple other facts just to point out is that we have a much higher ending fund balance than we've had in any year past. Our ending fund balance in June of 20 was 1.6 million. Our ending funding balance in June 2021 was $2.8 million. And so they do make notation of that within the document itself, that we have a reserve higher than what we need to have legally, but this was done purposefully with the fiscal cliff we were headed off of, the unknown with the state, with the infusion of federal and state monies. We purposefully built up our reserves high, and now we are able, as you know, we're going into negotiations and hope to do good faith bargaining with our groups, knowing that we did this purposefully to make sure that we would have money set aside. One of the other things is that GASB 68, which is our unfunded liability for STRS and PERS, went up from 19.5 million to 21.66 million for our district's debt liability. And we've passed the bar to say that we can secure and pay our unfunded liability. And I have one more area, and sorry, I highlighted and then I forgot why I highlighted. The one highlight in here is that our ending fund balance changed twice during last year, and that would be appropriate because at first interim, we update the budget with new funding. Second interim, we update the budget with new funding, and then we close the year out with our actual expenses. So typically that is where you would see the changes made at first and second interim. One of the other things is they do audit also our deferred maintenance fund and our capital facilities fund to make sure we are appropriately spending our money in capital facilities. With all that said, the grand finale is what everybody wants to know, and that's the last page of the document. And it is none, none, and none, which means we had no fiscal or financial findings whatsoever. So yay. With all of that said, I present our 2021 audit for the board to approve this evening.
Thank you so much, and congratulations again on that amazing last page. Team, do we have any questions or comments for Michelle?
Just thank you. That was a lot. So thank you for simplifying it for us. I appreciate it. And all the work. Amazing. And the findings, of course.
Yeah, thank you. I'm the person who reads the last page of a book. So I got right there. Actually, now when I watch a whole series, always watch the first and then the last before the first. He goes, then I just kind of scan through the center. But anyways, thank you for putting all that together.
Phil, there you go. Hey, Phil.
Thank you and congratulations. You know, I was startled that they didn't even have a page that said no findings. It just like ended after the recommendations. I went,
Yep.
okay. and the student account thing. So thanks for that. On the bond interest, I asked a while ago if we can somehow reduce bond interest. Is that something we're still working on? And you don't have to answer now, but
no, I just want to clarify to make sure I'm understanding your question. A bond interest, you mean the bonds that we've sold already to the public to go back out, and I have not, but I can definitely look into that.
Okay.
And that would
so
not.
I think it's a credit rating improvement then reduces. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there's that.
It wouldn't be the, just for clarification, it wouldn't be the bonds we just sold in 18. That's too soon. We would go back to the bonds that we sold, I believe in 2000 or 2010, when the original, those bonds that are still on the book, that we could get that consolidated. Yeah.
Yeah, because interest rate's going to be going up in like, a couple hours here. So. All right, the charts, I don't know if those are required in an audit, but I love them, for the visual folks. On page 130, for those of you who are interested, there's a list of depreciation by asset class, and, asset classes, we all love them. I noticed in a write-up on page 106, it looks like our percentage of local dollars is going up. Is that a trend? I mean, there was only 2 points there, but is this county or our district heading towards, fully funded kind of thing?
I've had discussions with Scott in regards to this. We are increasing our property tax income is steadily year over year, increasing more than 1%, which is typically what you would budget for. I mean, we have our property taxes and we have state aid. So property taxes go down, state aid goes up, property taxes go up, state aid goes down. So you level out. If we continue with this trend, 5 to 7 years from now, there is a good possibility the district would be in a situation where it's unfavorable, because we wouldn't be a basic aid district like, yay, we're a basic aid district. We're a basic aid district that year to year will probably teeter in and out, which makes things. So yes. So then, if our property taxes continue, at some point, I don't know. A lot of our property taxes do generate from the city of Capitola, as do our RDA taxes. And so that inflates that number.
Okay. So the new leave law, the new 40-hour thing, should we have a reserve for that? And it wouldn't be to pay to leave, but it would be to cover with subs.
That's a good question. Yeah,
no, you don't have to answer now.
It's 80 hours. It's 40 hours for the employee if they test positive, and it's an additional 40 hours if they have to take leave for a family member or that has tested positive, or to care for a child that is either being quarantined because of it. And so in total, it would be 80 hours. What the district is really spending would be the cost of the subs. And we do have money set aside for subs. So I feel confident that even with the addition to these hours, because what it means is the employee is now not using their sick leave bank. So the part of this, which a lot of it rides on, is a lot of people don't use a lot of their sick leave banks, especially in our industry, because with PERS and STIRS, you don't use your sick leave. And when you go to retire, you can calculate those days and add them onto your years of service. So, yeah.
Okay. And then the last question. So I love our auditors. They had to put the charts in. They're very responsive. And I don't think, middle of February is that bad compared to the January when you think about everything that's going on. But I have to ask this question, and that is, should we be thinking about a different auditor after so many years?
We legally, yes, and we do comply with that. And so One of the ways that you do that is you have a different principal, but you stay with the same auditing firm. And so it's the
Okay.
principal that you need to change, not the auditing firm itself. We haven't gone out. I can tell you, I've spoken to my counterparts in the county anyways. There's very few auditing firms and that specialize in this sort of audit. And I'm familiar with almost all of them. Competitively speaking, I don't think the district would do better. So for financial purposes, if we went out, it wouldn't be to save money. It would only be if we were dissatisfied with the services.
Okay, well, congratulations on your great audit. Thank you for doing everything. And it's difficult to come up with an audit without any kind of finding, especially when you have so many moving parts. Fund accounting is difficult. When you're a regular, profit and loss kind of company, it's one bottom line, not multiple. So, yay. And I'm done.
And just a shout out to my amazing staff, if I can, everyone, and not just the business department staff, but the school site staff for everything that they do, down to our employees that sometimes are not very happy with me with some of the decisions I have to make in regards to keeping us, not in school jail, as they call it.
All right. Thank you, Michelle. I don't think I see any other trustees with any questions or comments now. So let's go ahead and see if we have any questions or comments from the public.
There are no comments on this item on text.
I am sad to say there are no comments on email on this item. I know.
No one waiting on Zoom either.
And people are really missing out tonight. I don't know.
No
It's not like-
congratulations emails I'm so sad.
Yeah. All right, team, then do we have a motion to accept our annual fiscal audit report?
I'm proud to move.
I'll second, Carolyn.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thanks again, Michelle.
Thank you so much.
Okay. And then we're on to item 10B, our next action item to consider approving the 21-22 Comprehensive School Safety Plan, Part 1.
Thank you, Board President. So the Comprehensive School Safety Plan is an annual plan that has to be posted prior to March 1st each year by Ed Code. There are two parts to the Comprehensive School Safety Plan in the state of California. Part 1 is the part we'll go over now, and it's intended to be public, external, and includes a lot of pieces about the overall environment of the school. Part 2, already mentioned tonight, and was reviewed in closed session, is the internal plan, not intended to be public. And we addressed that, as I said, in closed session. One other tidbit before we dive into the plan is that as a district, a relatively small district or mid-size, as we're sometimes called, under 2,500 students, we are given the option of having a Part 1 comprehensive school safety plan for the entire district rather than one for each school, which makes a lot of sense because in a small district, you're sharing a lot of resources and wanting to be as consistent as possible to maximize those resources. So we do take that option and we publish one comprehensive school safety plan Part 1 for the entire district. With that said, I will go through the plan in the docket and I'll try to reference page numbers of the docket as we go for those following along. So starting on page 192, of course, we have just the cover page, noticing that this is Part 1 public components of the Comprehensive School Safety Plan. We then move through the table of contents. Many sections of the easy for me to say, Comprehensive School Safety Plan are really boilerplate in nature. For example, on page 194, it's the purpose of the Comprehensive School Safety Plan laid out. This is something that all plans across the state of California have to include. So I will move us forward to page 195 of the docket, which is page 4 of the plan, just to notice there that we have several people who review the plan, and that's a cross section of parents, administrators, teachers, staff members. On the classified staff, most notably our campus supervisors, which makes a lot of sense as their core mission is student safety. And then we're also fortunate to have a really good relationship with both of our law enforcement agencies that represent our district, And I'd really like to publicly acknowledge and thank them. That's Capitola Police Department and Santa Cruz County Sheriff's Office. At our most recent meeting where we reviewed the plan, Captain Sarah Ryan represented Capitola PD, and Deputy Curtis Harrison represented the Sheriff's Office, and Deputy Harrison serves as the Soquel High School School Resource Officer, and does a lot of work with our elementary schools that reside under his jurisdiction. And we're very thankful to both departments and to both of those individuals. I will now move us forward to the real meat of this plan, which is page 6 of the plan, page 197 of the docket. And so important to include data to see how we're progressing with overall school climate and safety. We traditionally use 3 pieces of data to monitor this, and that's suspension rates, with the idea that if you're having a positive school environment where students are engaged in pro-social activities, you're going to have fewer suspensions. We also include chronic absenteeism, again, with the idea that lower is better, and a positive welcoming environment is going to be a place where students want to attend more regularly and will represent a staff that is doing outreach and connecting with families in a meaningful way. The third piece of data that we have historically used to monitor our progress on the plan is the California Healthy Kids Survey, and I'll get to that piece in just a few minutes. Let's start with the suspension rates. And with almost everything these days, you have to do a little bit of explaining the context of the last couple of years as it relates to COVID-19 and school closures. And so obviously suspensions rate is something that we've been working on for some years in trying to identifying alternatives to suspension and taking a restorative approach rather than a punitive approach wherever possible. You can see several years of data here represented, and you can see that in 2017-18, for example, some of the work that we did really started to pay off, although we experienced a little bump back up in our suspension rate, going from 1.4% in 17-18 to 3% in 2018-19. Then, of course, comes along what we can call the COVID years. But the California Department of Education has done a good job of kind of stating where the data for each of these years stands in their analysis. So for 2019-20, even though that year was truncated, and you can see the asterisks there and the notation below that says, how it was truncated by the number of school days. That section highlighted in yellow, 2019-20, is deemed to be comparable. And so when we say, how are we doing that year? The context we usually like to use is schools across the county and schools across the state in comparison to our district. And obviously the 2019-20 school year was a year that some of the practices that we've been working so hard on in our schools really paid off. And you can see the very low suspension rate. Literally that year there were 4 suspensions at our schools. And so, and even though the rates were smaller across the county and the state, which is great for all of our schools in the county and the state, but that, as you can see by both the table and the graph, our suspension rate declined at an even steeper rate. And again, this is, I often like to say, sometimes you get a data set and you can attribute it, to very intentional practices. And sometimes, there's some chance involved in it. This is one data set that I think everybody at our school sites would agree is a result of some very intentional practices and really working hard on finding ways to support student behavior change that doesn't involve a punitive approach with suspension. On the next page is the second data set that I referenced, and that's chronic absenteeism. And for reference sake, I'm on page 6 of the plan. And that's, actually, I think that's mislabeled, page 7 of the plan, which is page 198 of the docket. And so kind of just the opposite in terms of the COVID year here. The way the California Department of Education has done their analysis is to say that in 2019-20, the year that was kind of cut short, that's not a year that we should really use for comparable, for comparison's sake. And in fact, not even data is published if you go to their data quest website. But the last year is, and hence it's highlighted in yellow, 2021, not 2020, 21. And of course, that year was not a full year of in-person learning, but was a year in which attendance was critically important. And I think you can see a lot of, it's nice when you see connections, because if you think back to what Jessica and Michelle presented with that LCAP addendum, a lot of the focus in there was ways to reach out and connect with families, ways to make, to remove barriers to school attendance and into learning. And you can really see that reflected here in that our chronic absenteeism rate was much lower than the comparison groups of the county and the state. And I think, there were a lot of re-engagement strategies that are still in place, but that were especially used during distance learning that can be attributed to. Everything from the technical piece of being able to provide hotspots and devices to families who needed them, to the more social emotional piece of reaching out to families when we started to see attendance slip and finding positive ways to connect with those families. So as is with almost all things, the real credit goes out there to the school staff and teachers who did all of that legwork. But you can see that the data is definitely trending in the right direction, whether you look at the table or whether you use the graph to analyze that. I will move on to the next page, and this is appropriately labeled page 8 of the plan, page 199 of the docket. And unfortunately, there's only really one small data piece that's comparable when we look at the California Healthy Kids Survey. And that's because at the time of the administration of the survey, we were still mostly in distance learning. If you think back to that time, we had a few cohorts of students that we brought back in places. We were trying to find ways to make sure that all students had the best access to instruction as possible. But at that point, the large majority of our students were still in distance learning and only a few cohorts in person. And so a lot of these questions, about feeling safe at school were not applicable, unfortunately. The one, apples to apples comparison that was applicable was on the 7th grade survey, as you can see highlighted in yellow there. And obviously lower percentage being desirable when the question is asked about any current alcohol or drug use. You can see how the question was phrased there. You can see on this self-reporting device comparing the last data set in 2019 to the most recent one in 2021, that there is a promising decrease in the number of students self-reporting current alcohol or drug use. Below there, you can see the explanation that I've already referenced, explaining the 3 data points and how they are, how they look this year. If you go on to the next page, you'll start to see some of the strategies that we implement to impact this data. And so at the bottom of page 9 of the plan, page 200 of the document, you'll see the strategies listed, starting with strategy 1 of providing internet safety training and resources to students, staff, and parents. Cyber safety, this is often called. It's always a very popular webinar or pre-COVID times assembly or workshop for parents to attend in person. As you can imagine, law enforcement has been impacted in the same way as most organizations have been. And so we have not had a chance to have that training offered to our parents yet this year, but we are working closely with law enforcement to be able to get access to that training ASAP. Strategy 2 is around the refining and improving our use of restorative practices. And you can see this across the board. When we were talking earlier tonight earlier this afternoon, our district leadership team, some of these parallels were mentioned about, for example, student discipline and how we're looking at that through the lens of the Racial Justice Task Force, and also how it's coming through in some of our work in social emotional learning. And really just kind of taking that holistic approach to seeing how we can support students whenever possible with changing behavior rather than punishing them. And I think at this point that has just become part of our district culture. Strategy 3 is to keep current with our Code Red drills and training, and that's something we are and will continue to work with law enforcement on. Strategy 4 is about providing annual training on the threat assessment protocol developed by the Santa Cruz County Office of Education. And that is something that we will plan to do again in the spring, something that I think our site administrators find very valuable, because in those moments where a threat comes across, it's nice to already have a framework and a tool to use to give some initial analysis to that. Strategy 5 is about providing the annual incident command center training to our administrators. And that's something, again, that we will offer in the spring of this year. Strategy 6 is to annually update each school's anti-bullying plan. And you will see those plans updated and included in the appendix of this overall comprehensive school safety plan part 1. Strategy 7 was, whereas a lot of these are, kind of about the approach and how we approach student discipline and school environment and nature. Strategy 7 was a really hard and fast measure. And that was to consider adding security cameras, vape detectors, and additional perimeter fencing at some of our school sites. And I'm glad to say that that has taken place at New Brighton and really kind of been a pilot year on using those security cameras. And while it's not a complete perimeter fencing, that was never the intention, right, to make a completely closed campus. Good work has gone into, especially at New Brighton, identifying what you could call maybe soft spots on places that would be challenging to monitor and supervise for campus entry, and additional fencing has been added in those quote unquote soft spots, and vape detectors as well. And so the vape detectors are, just, it's not a cure-all, like most things, it's really about education and encouraging students to make wise decisions. But as adolescents tend to do sometimes when those bad decisions are made, the vape detectors give us additional data on time of day and location where we may be in tune to being able to prevent it and or identify it so that we can correct that behavior. So those are the strategies in place. The rest of this document through the appendix is truly boilerplate and includes a very short description of the board policies that by law have to be included into the safety plan, and then literally all of those board policies verbatim from our policy handbook. If you do fast forward to page 250 of the docket, you will come to the appendix past the board policies, and you will see those anti-bullying plans that I mentioned earlier. And you will also see all of those plans in English and Spanish on poster-sized documents when you walk onto our school campuses. They're in very visible places at all of our sites. So that is a brief overview of the very thorough comprehensive school safety plan, and open it up to the board for questions or comments.
No questions from me. Thank you for walking us through the plan, and appreciate the work that goes into it and all of the efforts that are captured in the plan.
Yeah, agreed. You always provide such a thorough overview for this item each year, and that's much appreciated. And I also appreciate the update on the cameras and the vape detectors at New Brighton. So thank you.
I did have a question. The vaping, how prevalent of a problem is it?
It ebbs and flows, if I may give it, first a narrative response, like a lot of things with youth, right, and popularity. And, I don't have the data at hand. That is something that it's a really good question. And it might be, at a future board report, something to give a more definitive data report on. I think the way that our site administrators at New Brighton really like to use it is, like on a as necessary basis, right? Rather than, like something they check every day. If they kind of feel like there's been an uptick or that they're hearing, that there may be an uptick, then they can really hone in on it. And so it's, if you remember, I want to say like pre-COVID, like maybe a couple of years ago, and again, I'm kind of really talking just anecdotally, it really seemed to hit a peak where it was a real problem, and hence that's why districts like us were looking at finding a way to monitor usage in kind of a more systemic way. I think we're down from that peak, but still, it's still an issue. It's still an issue we'd like to more fully eradicate as possible. And I'd be glad to bring some of the data from those vape detectors and maybe give a little visual of the type of data that the site administrators look at a future board report.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm not saying anything else from any other members of the board. Just wave wildly if you have something you want to say. If not, then we'll move on and ask if we have any public comment on it.
And I do have some on text on this. And so the first one says, hello, President of the Board. Regarding 10B, if I may ask, can the 21-22 Comprehensive School Safety Plan Part 1 be made available and accessible for all employees to read? Thank you. And so so this plan has to be posted by law by March 1st. You will find the 2021 plan posted on our website. If I remember right, it's under the Parents tab. And this draft plan obviously is posted in this board docket. And if the board does approve it, then it will be posted before March 1st, well before March 1st, as the 21-22 plan. And then there's a second question on it regarding strategy 4. Will the district provide annual training on the County Office of Education threat assessment protocol to all staff, including classified employees? And so that threat assessment protocol is really designed for administrators. Of course, at the time of a threat, administrators work with all stakeholders on gathering information. But it really is intended for our administrators to be able to analyze a threat upon first receiving it. And those are the two things on text about this item.
Thank you. Anything on email or Zoom?
Nothing on email.
No one on Zoom.
All right. Thank you. And thank you, Scott, for answering the questions on our text comment. That being said, do we have a motion to approve the 21-22 Comprehensive School Safety Plan Part 1?
I'll go ahead and make the motion.
I'll second, Carolyn.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Very good. None opposed. All right. Our final action item is 10C, consider approval of the CSBA Delegate Assembly Representative for Subregion 9A.
All right. Well, this is always an exciting time to have our delegate assembly team fully formed. And so you will see that there are 2 slots. If you look at the real meat of this, page 256 of the docket, there are 2 slots and 2 folks running for those slots. And so can vote for no more than 2 candidates, and there are 2 candidates there. So I will let the board ask any questions and see if those 2 candidates are to their liking.
Thank you. Any comments or nominations? Yes, Phil, our expert.
Well, yeah, so we all know Deb, and we've been working with Deb for a number of years. Roger, I believe, was just appointed recently to become a delegate. And so this is his first election, but Roger has been, I think, very good at helping with our local school board association. So Amanda, you've been working with both of them all for, now a couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, Deb has been a long time delegate for CSBA, and Roger has been president of the Santa Cruz County School Boards Association, and they both of them are really dedicated and very skillful communicators, and so I think we'd be lucky to be represented by both of them. And that being said, I'm gonna make the motion that we approve both Roger Snyder and Deb Tracy Prue, meaning that we mark our ballot to select Roger and Deb as our delegate assembly votes. Anyone want a second or comment?
I'll second it. Was
Great.
it, you made the motion, Amanda?
I did, isn't that why?
Oh, that's fine. No, that's okay. Okay, good.
Yeah, thank you. So motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think we have to ask for a public comment, don't we?
Yes, thank you very much. Do we have any public comment?
Nothing on text.
Nothing on email.
No one on Zoom.
Thank
vote
you, Phil.
aye.
Thank you. All right, well, we'll just double check our vote now that we've double checked the public comment. So all in favor on that item?
Aye.
Aye. All right, and
Aye.
all in favor. Thank you very much. Any item 11, any correspondence anyone needs to report? Not seeing any. Item 12, any future agenda items requested by trustees at this time?
I have one. I don't know if this is the place to ask, but could we have an item on negotiating the superintendent's contract? I think there's this whole legal thing about even talking about that. So whatever it is that we need to do.
Got it. Your request is noted. Anything else from any other trustees as far as future agenda items? All right. Item 13, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second. Carolyn.
Great. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Oh, very good. Very good. Okay. Thank you, team. We will see you next week for our special session, and everybody have a great night.
All right. Take care. Stay
you,
safe.
everybody.
Everybody have a good evening.
Thank you,
Cheers.
Linda, and thank you, George. Good night.